The bombing of Dresden was a massive bombing that took place between February 13th through 15th in 1945. Many people were killed in Dresden throughout the 4-day bombing runs. We believe that Dresden was bombed heavily, and some of the reasons we believe this is that the war was coming to an end. The Allies did a 2-day campaign, and that Dresden did not contribute very much to the war compared to other cities in Germany. We will go into more detail in this documentary.
The bombing of Dresden happened at the later stages of the war, between February 13th to 15th in 1945. The Royal Air Force and the U.S. Army Air Corps sent over 300 bombers to the city, and the bombings caused a lot of death and the city caught fire. Dresden before the bombing was one of the most beautiful cities in Germany, and the people were fleeing to the town because of the advancing Soviet troops in the Eastern Front. Everyone was having a normal evening. Then at around 10 p.m., the 1st RAF bombing squadron sent over 500 Lancaster bombers to Dresden, and when they arrived overhead, air raid sirens began. The people ran in the streets to find shelter. The RAF bombers experienced almost no anti-aircraft resistance from the ground and had very little resistance from the German Luftwaffe, so only 6 bombers were shot down in total. After the RAF dropped their bombs and they turned around and returned to the field.
After the British bombing run, the city was on fire and many people died. While the city of Dresden was burning, the U.S. 8th Bombing Group got the order to bomb Dresden again. Later that morning, people of Dresden were terrified as they saw more bombers arriving overhead. The U.S. Army Air Corps dropped their bombs on the burning city and headed back to the airfield. The RFA and U.S. Air Corps continued and did 2 more bombing runs on the flaming city of Dresden within the next few days. The result of the bombings were devastating, and in total the bombing claimed around 25,000 lives and around 35,000 people were registered missing. Many historic monuments and buildings were destroyed in the fires, including the Dresden Ghetto.
The Allies side of the argument. The Allied forces claimed that Dresden was a military target, and they hoped that by bombing Dresden, they would cause chaos among the German refugees that arrived in the city. They hoped that the chaos would result in German reinforcements from being slowed down from reaching the Eastern Front against the Soviet forces. The Allies hoped that the bombing of Dresden would help force the Germans to surrender and cause the war to end in Europe.
German side. The Germans claimed that Dresden had very little contribution to the war and immediately began to over-exaggerate the death count by using the press. Germans claimed that the purpose of the Allied bombing was intended to terrorize the German population and that the bombing was not justified. The Germans claimed that the Allies committed a war crime. The people claimed that Dresden was not just the death of civilians and also the destruction of European culture. Also, another reason is because the war is coming to an end, so there have to be such a big destruction.
After all the information we have received, we believe that the bombing of Dresden was a war crime. We think that the first bombing was justified, however, the other 3 were not because they were just simply causing more pain and suffering to the German public. The war was also already coming to an end, and it had very little contribution to the German war effort. Thank you for watching our documentary.